You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Rays podcast. And today we have the great pleasure of being joined by Aram Leighton, the proprietor of JustBaseball.com, does amazing work on all things baseball related. Aram, appreciate you joining us in the dog days of summer here.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It definitely is the dog days. I can feel it a little bit, but we're also getting close to that final stretch. So excited for that final push here. And you never know with this Rays team, even when they start to seem like they're subtracting a little bit, they might start just playing a little bit better.
Absolutely.
You know, we had to get you on because obviously with the drafts going on, prospects, and the season might not be going as well as we would have hoped. But you are also here because of popular demand. People are clamoring for Aram to come and talk Rays baseball. So let's just get out of the way. What was your biggest impact right now when you were making that top 100 list and you were looking at the names for the Rays? What was the biggest thing that shocked you or moved you about these guys?
I mean, the thing that stays consistent for me, and as you saw with Junior Caminero being the number one prospect in baseball for us, it's just the potential that this guy can have. And I know I've been on the show talking about that and what he can do and what it can all look like when he gets to the big league level. And that's the clear cut, just on the forefront. We're talking about a guy that can hit 30 plus and just, I mean, make enough contact that you wouldn't expect from a guy with that kind of power. But I think the biggest trend and the thing that stuck out to me the most, and one of the biggest climbers for us, has been Carson Williams, guy that everybody's liked, obviously first round pick, lots of love there. Great glove at shortstop. And I know he's tapered off in the second half a little bit, but what he has done this year from a contact perspective, just improving the approach, just being a more well-rounded player, like that guy jumped as much as anybody for us. He's a number 12 prospect for us now on the top 100 list because, I mean, if this guy is a 30 to 40, if he's a 40 grade hitter, right now I think he's gotten to the point where he's getting closer to that 40 grade hitter. He's going to be a WAR accumulator because he's such a good defender. He has so much power. Now he's walking at a really solid clip. Seeing the contact come along, going from that 30 grade now to looking more like a 40 grade hit, that's all he really needs. So it looks like he could be that kind of Willy Adames type, but maybe even with a better glove, like we were talking about before. It's just been so nice to see that progression at 21 years old here, seeing him continue to take those steps forward. And then, Xavier Isaac's been one of my favorite prospects for a long time. Seeing him get up to Double-A has been really exciting. He went 0 for 4 with 4 Ks first time out. A lot of young hitters would probably let that kind of mount on them. Turns the page the next day, launches a home run, and also has some of the best ABs against one of the best pitching prospects in baseball in Noah Schultz. So the top dogs in the Rays system are really looking solid right now.
And there's a guy on the list, top 100 list, Braylor Guerrero, 94th overall, just 18 years old, in the complex league, outfielder, by the way, ETA of 2028. What stood out about his gameplay that makes you confident to put him on the top 100 list, where you see a lot of other guys that are in Double-A, Triple-A? Like, this is a young cat. There's got to be something special with him that you see.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought him up because there's probably more complex and lower level players on this list than maybe ever that we've put out because you had a lot of graduations. And also I just think the talent right now at those levels is really, really impressive. Guerrero, one of those key examples, $3.7 million international free agent. As you know, that doesn't really mean too much because a lot of times those guys will end up getting on the field and playing professionally, and it doesn't look the way that they thought when they paid that money out. Guerrero looked as advertised right away. What I really like about him is the power's evident. He's filled out and he's already popping exit velocities as high as 111 miles per hour prior to his 17th birthday. Like that, you just don't see that. He's battled injuries, and that seems to be a little bit of a concern here. Now he's a little bit banged up again, but the swing is already pretty advanced for a guy that is that physical and that powerful at that age. I think he's a better athlete than he gets credit for, and he seems like a guy that could tap into 30 home run upside. Obviously, he's got to prove that he can hit enough. We're going to have to see that, the first test will be at the low A level, but everything that he's done on the field so far has been incredibly impressive. The power is very easy to dream on, and, I think that the swing is pretty advanced for how physical he is at such a young age.
obviously anything can happen with prospects, but it's better to see a lot of names from your organization, the team you root for, on the top 100 than seeing none, right?
Yes.
Well, were there, maybe I'm being a little bit greedy here, Aram, but were there other names that you might have thought about including, and then at the end you decided, no, not yet, or not right now, and why?
That's a great question. Braden Taylor, I like him. He's really solid. I liked him out of the draft, but just the limited upside compared to some of these other prospects kind of left him out for me. I know a lot of people in the industry that I really respect that have him as a slam dunk top 100 prospect. So, that's definitely something that I can see just off of the feel to hit. And he's a guy that doesn't put up the best exit velocities, but he's, the way people always underestimated Isaac Paredes, where it's like, oh, but look at the Savant page. It's like, some guys can just outslug the EVs. I do think Braden Taylor is cut from that cloth, which is why, the Rays probably loved him. He backspins baseballs consistently and he pulls them in the air. You don't need to have plus exit velocities to tap into above average power to do that. So I do like that about Braden Taylor. The problem is Isaac Paredes, the reason why he was able to do that is he also had elite bat to ball skills. You have to have a very advanced feel for the barrel to be able to manipulate it to the degree where you are pulling everything over the fence and backspinning it to the consistency that Isaac Paredes did. People look at EVs and they're like, oh, the ball is just, that means the ball goes further. Yes. It also widens your margin for error, because if you don't totally square it up, but you've got Junior Caminero bat speed, how many clips have you seen on Twitter of Junior Caminero looking like he missed a ball that ends up carrying out because he generates so much force and ends up backspinning baseballs the way that he does? So Braden Taylor's margin for error is a little bit thinner, and I don't think he has the contact rates to combat that just yet. So I'd like to see him either tap into a little bit more raw power or make some more consistent contact. That said, he's got a great approach. Again, already having that feel to elevate is a great addition too. And I think he's looked better defensively than a lot of people were expecting. Can kind of move all over. I think the shortstop thing's not really going to happen. So it's more second or third base, but he's looked better at those two spots. So I think he's a really solid player, but just missed the top 100 consideration.
Now, a couple guys that aren't on the top 100, but are generating some fanfare by the Rays fan base and other outlets out there. Chandler Simpson, Gary Gil-Hill. Do you have any read on those guys and your expectations for them? I know they provide unique skill sets respectively.
Gary, I'm glad you brought up Gary Gil-Hill. I would have been at dinner after this and been like, oh my gosh, I forgot to mention Gary Gil-Hill. That was another guy that was very close to cracking the list. Honestly, there's a real case, a real scenario where in a month or two, I'm like, man, I should have had him on there. And in the final update, he gets in there. I just haven't been able to see enough to just be totally transparent. But 19 years old, he's not going to turn 20 until in the end of September. And filling up the strike zone the way that Gary Gil-Hill does is really amazing. I mean, 70% strike rate on the fastball, which is like sitting 94. Then he's got a slider, a curve. The changeup's the one pitch he's still kind of finding the feel for. And then he'll even mix in like a sinker as well. Just having that kind of feel to pitch and that athleticism on the mound already is standout. And then you think about where the Rays can probably get him, having that mold and that template, being able to build off of that. This is a guy that probably will be on our top 100 update. At the end of the season. Again, just needed to see a little bit more from him. But once he gets up from low A, I think a little bit more of a challenge to see if the stuff translates the same way. This is a dude that could be an absolute monster. Really, the numbers would be way better if not for one blow-up start. He had 8 earned runs in one outing. Other than that, he has not given up more than 3 earned runs in a single outing and had a bunch of scoreless ones. So he's been really, really impressive. And then Chandler Simpson, I mean, this is the fastest man, I think, in baseball at any level. It's incredible to watch him run. And talking to some of the Rays, some of the people in the Rays organization, just their firsthand experience there is just everyone talks about how he does things in the baseball field they've never really seen. Adding to that, the defensive ability that he has and just being a menace on the base paths, he's going to have a big league role one way or another. My concern is, his exit velocities would be the lowest in Major League Baseball. That's okay. There's always going to be somebody that pushes a new boundary, and he clearly has the skill set to be able to do that. He also posts elite contact rates, which really helps as well. It's hard to fully get behind a guy that's going to be an outlier, but he does compensate for that by being an outlier on the positive side with his speed, with his bat to ball skills, and even a great approach for a guy that's so contact oriented. So I just wonder how it's going to look at the big league level. Like if you look at the spray charts, if you put it in, even in Tropicana, like even the furthest hit balls are all still like 15, 20 feet from the wall. So it would be a real throwback, unique type. But if anyone can do it, it's Chandler Simpson. So I can't wait. And I hope he makes us all feel like we missed the boat a little bit, because, you know, he has the talent to do so.
It can get real hot real quick, and you might not notice, but maybe you're a little bit dehydrated. And what better way to get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America? That's right. It's Liquid IV. You know, you can take it anywhere. I mean, if you're on the beach, if you're traveling, if you're just going out for a walk, guess what? You just need 16 ounces of water plus that one stick. You tear it, you pour it, you live more, and you hydrate better than water alone. So no more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. Really simple code, people. MLB. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code, everybody, MLB at liquidiv.com.
Passion, drive, and patience, that is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is returned. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers.
Is that, I mean, you said it's an outlier, but that's why you can't really go 100% behind it. But what about a Billy Hamilton career, like a turn score? Like, is this something like that's where the fear comes from? Where like, okay, yeah, he's killing it in the minors, but when he gets to major league pitching, it's gonna be so tough to actually like get to use those amazing outlier skills that he has.
Absolutely. I think that's somewhat of the concern. The thing that works in his favor is that I think he's got a better feel to hit than both of those guys by a good margin. The other side is those guys probably actually hit the ball a little bit harder too. Mm-hmm. So it's this unique push and pull here. He's got a 384 BABIP, which I think he's going to be a guy that will have a pretty high batting average on balls in play. But I do think a big part of that is think about the infielders there. Like, these guys are not going to get the ball out as quickly. They're not going to throw it as hard. So you're going to get away with a lot more infield hits. You're going to have a lot more bloops fall. Like in the major leagues, they're going to have your spray chart to a T, and they're going to play you in, and they're going to be able to pitch you in certain spots. I love Chandler Simpson, the ball player, and I still think that he can succeed and be a 2-win player, 3-win player if it works out. That's just the reason why he's not quite on the top 100 list. Like Ailina Brayler Guerrero, for example, because you can see what that would be, which could be 30 home runs. Of course, the floor is way lower, but the ceiling floor combination here with Chandler Simpson is probably as close as any player you're going to find, which is like is a good thing in some sense too. And again, I think he has a big league role one way or another, which is great. And he's comfortably a top 15 prospect in the system. I just think you need to have a little bit more upside to be, regarded as one of the 100 best. But I'm excited to see what it looks like at the big league level. And I know the Rays are going to use him wisely.
Fun to see. I'm hoping for the next Juan Pierre. Fingers crossed.
That would be fun.
Yeah. On your top 100 list, besides the Rays, talking more league wide, are there a couple guys across baseball that you're really more intrigued or bullish on compared to the industry? Is there a name or two that, hey, you have ranked significantly higher or greater than some other outlets out there?
That's a good one, because I think there's quite a few on this one, because I think this was the most wide open top 100 we've had in a while because of so many graduations and the new draft guys. And just the way that baseball is at right now, a lot of the upper level minor leaguers are kind of already up at the big leagues. And then there's not a lot in between. Then there's a lot of lower level guys as well. And then a lot of players that have kind of just been settling in and been on lists for a while. So it's a unique situation here. But for me, I think Roman Anthony of the Boston Red Sox, he's 5 for us. Outfielder with massive power. South Florida kid as well. That's not why I ranked him high, I promise. But hit a ball 116 miles an hour the other day. But he's also can run really well, can play center field. I think the Red Sox have a special player there, and he was kind of untouchable for a reason. And then a deep cut name that I think people are going to start to hear more and more of. He's still in the Dominican Summer League, so like you're not going to hear much for a little bit. But Jesus Mate. And it's just reads as Jesus made, which I love. It's just such a fun name. But Jesus Mate of the Milwaukee Brewers is one of the freakiest athletes I've seen in a long time. The same way that I fell in love with what Ellie De La Cruz. I'm not saying he's going to become Ellie De La Cruz because Ellie De La Cruz is way bigger and way crazier. But the same way I kind of fell in love with his skill set at the complex is similar to what I love about Jesus Mate. Switch hitter. He's speedy. He has a really advanced approach, which is different from De La Cruz. Some of the quickest hands I've seen from a minor leaguer, let alone a 17-year-old. He's already hitting balls 109 miles an hour, can run, I think has a chance to stick it short, but some of the best bat speed I've seen from a teenage prospect. So that's another player I'm really, really excited about as well. And then the last one, Zaire Hope of the Dodgers. Outfield prospect, came over in that Michael Busch trade from the Cubs. I think he's probably easily one of the most underrated prospects in baseball. He's been hurt for a portion of this year, just came back. I think he's an elite blend of power and speed, and the hit tool really gets underrated.
We talked about earlier how the Rays underperformed expectations thus far. And as a result, again, being a spoiled Rays fan, we have seen them sell off a lot of names this year that we hadn't seen in a long time, that kind of activity. How do you process what happened for the Rays, according to the prospects? Did you like what they got? Were you surprised that they usually went for guys in the lower levels of the minors? Like, how do you assess their prospect haul?
I thought, once you fully grasp what the Rays are doing every year, then when they do it, you can kind of judge it off of their own scale, meaning like, did they do what the Rays want to do as successfully as possible? Is always the way I like to look at it, because the moves are always going to make people scratch their heads. You have 2 years of control. Why would you trade him? Blah, blah, blah. That's how they turn the talent. That's how they continue to do it. All the players that they added in, which has been well documented, is we're all guys that were 2023 draftees because they don't have to add them to the 40-man roster anytime soon. So they don't have a Joe Ryan situation again, right? They don't want to have those 40-man crunch situations. So in terms of the Rays executing what is a proven concept, you can say what you want to, it doesn't win a World Series. I think that's so ridiculous, because winning a World Series is incredibly difficult, and I think it's a crapshoot once you get to the playoffs. That's a whole different conversation. But for the Rays to be able to compete with everybody else, with the big market teams, and continue to funnel in talent and churn talent, this is the way that they've done it. And looking at it from that lens, targeting players that they don't have to add to the 40-man anytime soon, trying to capitalize and still have as much upside coming back in your direction in the deals that they made, I thought they nailed it. I really do. I think Morel fits the bill of a lot of what they like, which is the high EVs, exciting tools, undervalued because people don't quite know where to put him and what to do with him. Hunter Biggie, I think, is the most underrated player that was traded at the deadline. That guy gained 3 to 4 miles per hour on his fastball in the offseason. It is goofy characteristics on it. Like, he's going to dominate with that heater. The slider is gross. Like, this is a classic, why would they get a reliever, a minor league reliever? And then that guy ends up either getting converted to a starter or is a high leverage arm for them for 3-4 years. And then they turn him into the Jason Adam return. And everyone's like, wow, how'd they get so much? And we rinse and repeat. I think Biggie can be that kind of guy. But I thought that trade was solid. I really like the Randy Arozarena return as well. I think Aiden Smith is someone that's about to have a lot of helium, just didn't quite get bumped up the rankings quick enough. And that's another reason why I think these Rays trades always end up getting kind of mischaracterized. They're targeting players that were recently drafted. A lot of those recently drafted players have not had their scouting reports updated from either amateur or just from the first year of professional baseball. Aiden Smith is a 70 defender potentially in center field and has been slugging way more than people were expecting, has a good approach. Hit tool is a little bit of a question. Rays don't care too much about that, and I think he's answered that question pretty well so far for a young high school bat. So I really like that addition. The arm they also got in that deal, extremely impressive. Low release, has been dominating through the minor leagues this year as well. So I thought they did really well overall with their returns prospect-wise. And it's not like the team is totally liquidated. Morel helps you in the short term. You still have some pieces up there. And yes, of course, in a perfect world, you keep those guys, but it's the Rays. So it's not the world that we want to pretend it is. So if they're doing what we knew they were going to do, I thought they executed it pretty well.
Prize Picks. Baseball season is moving right along, and you can make some cash on Rays performances over on Prize Picks. Whether it's stolen bases, home runs, or hits, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. You can turn $10 into $100 with just a few taps. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDON for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entries in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. So get in on the action with Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for up to $100 match on your first deposit. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy. And speaking on that for a second, so out of all the moves that they made, well documented, of course, they added 14 prospects, including 2 players to be named later. Among the notable prospects added, Dylan Lesko, Brody Hopkins, Aiden Smith, Jackson Baumeister, Mac Horvath, Homer Bush, Gregory Barrios, JD Gonzalez, Matt Etzel. Out of all those guys, and there might be some guys that I didn't include on that list either, those were just some of the more notable names. Which do you think ultimately becomes the best and biggest big leaguer?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm actually glad you read all those names because I forgot. They brought in so many players that I forgot a couple. Even that Eflin return, not bad. People forget that there's $20 million attached to that guy essentially. So you're only going to have so much value there, especially with him, having some minor medical concerns too. I'm very interested to see what the players to be named later are, but regardless, it's an extra player that's coming back from a return I already thought was quite good. Looking at all of the returns, I think from a pitching perspective, Dylan Lesko still has the highest upside. We're talking about a guy that was the best prep arm in his draft class, has just really struggled to throw strikes since coming back from Tommy John. But that's something that the Rays have really been able to help pitchers with. I think also Lesko's an athlete. He just hasn't quite found that arm slot yet. So just trying to refine that. The fastball characteristics are elite. He has one of the best changeups in the minor leagues. And if they can kind of help him spin it a little bit more consistently, this is a guy that I still think can be a really good starting pitcher. And he just missed the top 100 as well. But at the very least, could be a great high leverage arm. I still think Biggie could end up being one of the most dominant in shorter spurts. But I also think Brody Hopkins was a very, very underrated arm to add to the fold too. But of the position players, I think, a lot of it was kind of defense and higher floor and all of that. I do think Aiden Smith is the best bat that they got back because you're getting the elite defense, but also some offensive upside. Whereas a Homer Bush, it's kind of glove first and not a lot of power and more just hit. I think some of the other pieces is kind of the same story. I think you're getting the best of both worlds with an Aiden Smith, and I do think he's going to be a top 100 prospect by next year.
Rays haven't been historically adept behind the plate. That's the polite way of saying it. Are there any catchers out there, prospect-wise, that you think this guy could become available and the Rays would have the right haul to actually make this trade? Is there a name behind the plate? Can you at least give us something to fantasize a little bit for 5 minutes about a catcher that wears a Rays uniform and is productive on both sides of the plate?
Do you think they'll ever want one?
Maybe not. Maybe that's the thing.
I'm watching Peter Bendix do the same thing to the Marlins now too. They're just like, hey, let's see how bad we can get at catcher and still win ball games. It's the weirdest thing in the world. I could see, a reclamation project type of former top prospect that still has tools, like a Diego Cartaya from the Dodgers. You know that the Rays and the Dodgers like to trade a lot. Cartaya has been a guy that, I've been lower on for a little while now, but at the end of the day, he's still very talented. He's had a better year this year. Like, he's been building back up. This is a guy that people love to make up the way that he calls a game. He's got above average power, but just the hit tool has just not quite come along the way that people had hoped. The Dodgers are loaded at catcher. Obviously, they got Will Smith locked up indefinitely. They've got Dalton Rushing ahead of him as well. They already moved off of Tyron Lorenzo, who is another catcher for them, but they don't need Cartaya either. He's also going to take a 40-man spot, so that might be a reason why the Rays may not be jumping out for that. But Cartaya could be a guy that's big league ready, as soon as the start of next year. So I think that could be a fun reclamation project. I feel like that's the one spot where the Rays will kind of pick up catchers, is like the failed prospect types.
Okay.
But I do think that could be a good spot for them to kind of buy low.
Final question for you, Aram, because I know we got to get going here. What'd you make of the Rays 2024 MLB Draft? Of course, they took Theo Gillen, tops overall. Their third pick, or the compensation pick, actually did not sign and is going off to college, interestingly. But as a whole, cumulatively, having trouble here. What did you make of what the Rays did the last couple weeks on the draft?
So I love the Gillen pick, and actually that was one of the few mock drafts picks that we got correct at Just Baseball. I was pumped about that one because I thought he fit the exact archetype of what the Rays would be interested in. This guy's super talented. Actually, even a little bit more of a better feel to hit, I think, than usually what they look for in their high school guys. But elite athlete, really good swing, and honestly, tooled beyond belief. The only reason why I think he was available at 18 was he's had a pretty rough injury history. He's had a shoulder, knee, I think, and maybe one other issue along the way. The thing that the Rays are is they're very risk tolerant with the draft, because I think they look at it like this: like it's risky no matter what. Look at Spencer Torkelson. He's fighting for his life in AAA. That was the safest pick of all time, right? Like, it's always risky. So if you really like the player, you can take on those other sides of the risk, right? And I think from a baseball perspective, Gillen is not nearly as risky as a lot of other high school types, with the swing being as advanced as it is, as fast as he is, and just as athletic as he is. So I really liked that pick. And then I liked balancing it out, though, with a solid bat in Emilian Petrie. And that's another player that I do think was a very overlooked bat out of Kentucky that is high floor, high probability big leaguer to balance it out. But I thought the Theo Gillen pick was great. And that's a guy that I had as a top 15 player in the class. I do think, if it weren't for health concerns, probably a top 10 guy in the class for me. So I thought that was a really good get for them.
Aram, thank you so much. Locked On Race listeners just love you. They're asking for you. How can they get more of Aram Leighton? Where is your stuff?
So justbaseball.com. We just dropped the top 100 today as we're recording this. So very excited about that. Very much looking forward to taking a nap after that as well. So, but you can check that out on justbaseball.com. You can check out the Call Up, our prospect podcast, where we're breaking down, each of the team's farm systems, of course, our top 100 and everything that went into that, as well as player interviews, always interviewing players from all 30 farm systems. Have had several Rays prospects on through the years, and I'm sure we will at some point this year. And then, of course, our flagship show, the Just Baseball Show, which I'm on several times per week as well. You can check us out there. I want to do trivia with you guys next time, so we'll have to do this again, because that was a lot of fun. I know this is the one time I had to get out of here a little bit quicker, but I would love to do trivia and talk about the new stadium. I'm excited about that for you guys. So
Nice.
hopefully your ownership doesn't pump fake the high payroll like the Marlins did.
Right.
When they
you have some experience with that.
Yeah, that was a fun one. So we'll have to talk about that next time. But thank you guys for having me on as always. It's always a blast with you.